Good evening, my wonderful students. You are welcome again onto the learning platform. That's the online class. Last week, we had a discussion concerning learning. We took ourselves through the definitions of learning based on the behaviorist and the cognitivist. This evening, we are going to tackle the contemporary approaches to learning. Indirectly, the theories that governs how you and I learn. And the contemporary theories are three that we know about. These concept theories are the behaviorist, the cognitivist, and the information processing theories. With the behaviorists, as you know already, they think the individual learner has nothing to do in his world. He's merely controlled by the environmental stimuli or anything that is happening within the environment. He's just there like a television mounted on the wall that is operated with a remote. So you can't think for yourself. You merely act upon a stimuli impinging on your senses. With the cognitivists, they think human learning goes beyond a mere stimulus response, but we involve thinking, thought processes. We have to reason out issues, analyze them before we take an action. So the television are used, if you're going by the behaviorists, they will say it has nothing to do than the remote being controlling it. But the cognitivists will say that the television has capacitors that is used to work. So when you press on the remote control, some things within the television will work before we see the screen showing. And that's the cognitivist view. The third contemporary approach is the neurophysiological theory. They are in the same dynamics with the cognitivists, but they liken the human mind to a computer. How the human mind works is just like the way a computer works. So we take in information, we process the information, and we let the information out when the need be. So these are the three contemporary theories that governs the way and I you and the way and manner you and I learn when it comes to learning. Going forward, we have to break all these three theories into their various components in terms of their individual contribution to human learning. And we are starting with the behaviorist approach with their acronym SR theories. The SR means stimulus response. Stimulus response. According to the behaviorists, the study of learning is about things that we can observe, things that we can measure, things that we can describe, and not things that we cannot see, things that we cannot measure, not things that we cannot even observe them or describe them. So anything observable, describable, measurable is based on the behaviorist view. According to them, whatever thing that occurs in the individual learner is just a mere stimulus response, an environmental event propelling or compelling you as a learner to react to its compellment or to react to its force. So that is how it works. The SR means stimulus response. So when the environmental event impinges on your senses, you merely respond to it as it is. According to the behaviorists, they are governed with three assumptions. When we say assumptions, it's about their principle that they hold up onto. It's their principle that they hold up onto. And that is the principle that guides the way and manner you and I learns, according to the behaviorists. The first principle says that the individual human learner is neutral and passive until it is stimulated by environmental stimuli or event, which it merely responds to. It means you are just dormant. You don't know anything about the environmental event. You are just there until that environmental event called stimuli impinge on your senses or your system, then you react to it. The second assumption says any type of behavior that the individual learns, the person can unlearn it and relearn it depending on situations that he or she is exposed to within the environment. It means if you learn today, you can forget it tomorrow, and you can equally relearn what you have forgotten when situations change. The third one says complex behavioral patterns are learned through additive processes, that's quantitative in kind. It means when we encounter difficult situations when it comes to learning, we add on onto what we have already. And whatever we add on, it just increase. It increase. It never quality, it's quantitative in nature. So let's say, for instance, you have learned how to, a child that you have taught how to rattle with the ABCD, the English alphabet, ABCD. Then the following month, 2 months, 3 months, he's able to add A and B and A again called ABBA. The child is just adding on to what he or she knows, which is quantitative in nature. That is how it is explained. And these are the three assumptions that governs what the behaviorists say when it comes to learning. The second contemporary theory or approach to learning is the cognitivist. With the cognitivists, they accept the fact that the individual learns and the learning involved by the person is measurable, quantifiable, but then it goes beyond that. There are situations whereby someone can learn without showing any action. There are instances where the person might learn without even letting anyone within the environment see him. So for instance, your thinking, your reasoning, your feelings, all come to the place of the cognitivist. How do you know someone understanding something? How do you get to know someone is attending to you? How do you know someone is thinking about situations? But before someone learns, he or she must at least think about situations before he take an action. And that's the tenet of the cognitivist. With them, they recognize that much learning involves association established according to the principles of contiguity, how close they are, repetition, how, what do you call it? They are supporting the view of the behaviorists rather. They accept the fact that we associate things for learning to occur. And again, when we continuously repeat issues, learning occurs. And as well, when we reward behaviors that we see in learners, the behavior continues to occur. That is the reinforcement. Out of this, they said it is limited. The cognitive says, although these are important to learning, but they are limited. Why are they limited? The limitation is that the individual learner actively processes the information before he takes an action. So let's bring our television back to the scene. Television is mounted, has a remote control, there's a power source, we have connected. If you are going by the cognitive, when you press the power button on your remote control, things occur within the television before the screen shows. So those things that occur that you don't see until you see the screen brighten, they are the cognitivist domain, meaning the TV equally reason. The TV equal reason. Let's say you're ward at home, you are with him or her, you call the ward to pick something. The ward just don't wake up and pick that thing for you. They reason through cognitively before they pick you that thing. You are walking around and you are pierced underneath with something sharp on the ground. Quickly, you lift your leg out of it. Your mind thought that what is doing this before you lift it. You never acted based on just a mere stimulus response, but you thought about the situations, then you acted. And that is the cognitivist view. With them, the individual use insightfulness. Sometimes we call it aha experience. Maybe you encounter a problem that you never have any immediate solution to it. Then you sit down, ponder over the situation, then within a twinkle of an eye or unthinkably on your side, unknowingly and unplannedly, impromptu, the answer comes to mind, then you give it out. It's an insight because when you sat down quietly, silently, pondering over situation or problem solutions, it was a period of insightfulness to see which of the solutions would best fit your problem. So they believe that behaviors that we learn are both through multiplicative process, that's qualitative in kind, that we don't judge learning based on how increased it has become, but how quality it is. And they say multiplicative, a lot of things occur in the mind from the neurons and they fire from every angle, then they connect or bring to a consensus before you take an action. That is their view based on the point I just explained. The third aspect that I was saying, they are the neurophysiological theories. They are saying that the learner mind is just like a computer. And the way the computer works is similar to the man, but they don't see the man is a computer itself. Why are they saying that? We take in information from the environment. We think through the information, take in the nice ones or the better ones, then we act on the better ones. So encoding, storage, and retrieval is their process of learning. So when you encode, you take new information from the environment, you try to make it in such a way that you'll be able to understand it one day. Then you try to maintain the information within your memory system. That's the storage. Then when you are asked a question and you bring forth the information to solve a problem, that's the retrieval. So with them, they are concerned with whatever that happens during learning in the brain of the person. So they examine issues such as the processes and encoding techniques that are involved in storing information in the brain in a relative feminine manner. Two, the retrieval of the stored information to guide your later performance of any task that you'll be engaged. Three, the nature of change that occurs in the brain when learning takes place and how this change persists or fades out. That's the argument. It is possible that you can learn something that is important to you. It is also possible that you can forget that thing or fade out if you don't practice it. And with them, if you learn, you must consistently practice. If you don't practice, it will fade out or you forget. That's the neurophysiological theory or information processing theories. This group of individuals also share the viewpoint of the cognitivists. They share similarities in that intake of the information from the environment is an active thing by the learner. So whatever the learner takes from the environment, he actively gets himself involved in it by thinking about situations. Based on the thinking, he takes a decision. So to them, the information processing theories, learning involves active processing of information rather than mere stimulus response. Again, items of information acquired through the learning are sorted, meaning we try to take the better ones. They are filed. We try to arrange according to how it's supposed to be done. And they are cross-indexed. They try to create linkage among the various information that the person is exposed to, rather than trying to randomly associate them from A to Z. Again, apart from what they have said, they also believe that the individual learner must always and actively try to try to at least repeat the information, try to apply it in other sectors or other works of academics so that he or she will not forget about them. So once you have learned something using the cognitivist or the neurophysiological approach or the information processing approach, you must actively get engaged in it, else you will forget or the information will fade out. And when we say fade out, when the time passes, it's like you have written on a blackboard or a marker board with a marker. You give it time, 1 week, 2 weeks, you see that the marker that you've written on the board or the line that you drew on the board will be fading. It is disappearing slowly. That is how information disappears when it comes to the human mind, according to the information processing theories. So once you don't attend to it, it's possible the information will fade out. Now, among the three bigger pictures that we have given to ourselves or exposed ourselves to, they have been broken under them. We have various theories with different views that they have offered us. So, as I was saying, aside the bigger pictures that we have exposed ourselves to, under each of the bigger pictures, behaviorist, cognitivist, and information processing theories, we have sub-individuals or sub-theories that has done enormous works in terms of learning. So we are going to take ourselves through these individual theories and their contribution to the concept learning. The first one will be the associative learning theory, that's the behaviorist with the SR theories. They include Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, Baruch Frederick Skinner, and Edward Lee Thorndike. The second one is the social learning theory or observational learning theory by Albert Bandura. And the third one is the cognitive learning theory, where we have David Osbel and Jerome Bruner with the meaningful reception learning and discovery learning. So we are going to talk about them individually so that you appreciate how they explain learning and how you can also employ any of their techniques in order to improve upon the learning of your students that you'll be engaging very soon. With the associative learning theories, the first one is the Ivan Petrovich Pavlov. He proposed the classical conditioning. According to this man, he was one day working in a lab Unknown to him, he identified that a lab coat that was worn by his lab technician was hung somewhere. And that place, his dog, that's a local pet that he had, saw the white coat and started producing saliva. That's a salivation. So he became so fascinated. What is happening? He drifted his attention from what he was doing, then to study what was happening to the dog. So he got close and measured the quantum of saliva that was produced by the dog. And he foresaw that because the dog has been exposed to a white coat being worn by a man, and the man comes with a food anytime he wears that white coat, so the mere scene of the white coat will evoke a response from the dog. So, and as you can even consider, you and I, none of us here can say we don't like food. Once you are hungry and you see food or you get food, you must eat it in order to quench your hunger. So this man thought that the dog was hungry and saw the white coat. That is why it salivated. And the salivation was natural. It was something the individual dog never learns. And the food too, your yearning for food, your craving for food is something you don't learn, but it just comes when you feel for food. When you feel for food. So this man saw that no, if food is natural, then it is something that we don't learn. And he named the food unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned stimulus, meaning unlearned stimulus. Unlearned stimulus. And if saliva is something that each individual can produce without learning how to produce it, then it's also called unconditioned response. Unconditioned response, meaning unlearned response. Unlearned response. So he broke the theory or his experiment into three phases, where we have the unconditioned stimulus, that UCS, against the unconditioned response, UCR. So the sight of food will allow the dog to salivate, will allow the dog to salivate. And he said, okay, if one other time I add something that the dog never knows in its life, and that thing will be bell, or anything that can produce a sound, and pair that particular thing with the food, maybe one day that thing will get the properties of the food and equally evoke a response from the dog. So he started pairing food with a bell. And this is how it was done. Before he give the food to the dog, he rings a bell and present the food. Rings a bell and present the food. And the dog responded. So this stage was named conditioning phase. Conditioning phase. That's the second stage. The first stage was unconditioned phase, where we have the UCS against the UCI. Now we have the conditioning phase. Here we have food plus unconditioned, food plus bell. Food plus bell. The food is the unconditioned stimulus. The bell is a neutral stimulus. Neutral means the dog hasn't learned anything about responding to a bell, but they add it to a food so that the bell will get the properties of the food, and in one day, the bell alone can let the dog respond. Yet, when they do that, it allowed the dog to respond naturally. And the natural response was the UCR again, unconditioned response. But continuous pairing of the food and the bell allowed the bell to take the properties that the man called Pavlov wanted. So in the third scenario, he replaced the food with a bell and rang only a bell, and the dog responded. So now the bell is no more a neutral stimulus, but now conditioned stimulus. Conditioned stimulus because it is something the dog has learned. It has conditioned itself to it. And the response the dog produces after ringing of the bell alone was conditioned response, which is a conditioned phase at the third phase. So the theory was broken into three: unconditioned phase, UCS against UCR; conditioning phase, UCS plus bell going to or against UCR; and the third phase, conditioned phase, CS against CR. That is conditioned stimulus against conditioned response. And the conditioned stimulus is now the bell. And the conditioned response is the same saliva. For example, let's take ourselves into another example that is relating to our human nature. If you are passing by the window of someone, the person is cooking a food that is highly aromatic, how do you feel? You sense like, or you smell like, I wish I could eat this food. and you could see your mouth turns watery. The watery content that the salivary gland produces become your unconditioned response. And the food scent that you smell was an unconditioned stimulus. So if you continue to be exposed to this, you will learn to go by it and nothing will occur. So when we go with something that is learned, you are going to conditioned stimulus and not unconditioned stimulus again. And you respond to it because you have learned it. It's conditioned response and not unconditioned response. So note it and know how they are going to be used. Application question will be given using me, creating a scenario, and then you try to fix which one is unconditioned stimulus, which one is conditioned stimulus, which one is unconditioned response, which one is conditioned one, which one is neutral. Eventually, you get it when we meet face to face. When I'm about giving you the next TMT. So you have the phases being given in a structured format with the skeletal alphabet that we have used, the process of condition or phases. Unconditioned phase, where we have food, again salivation, that's the unconditioned response. The conditioning phase, we have CS against UCS, that gives us UCR. CS means bell, UCS means food, and the salivation is the response, that's the UCR. Now we have conditioned phase, CS, that is bell, conditioned response, that's salivation, that is CR, because they have learned. Unconditioned means you have not learned. Conditioning means you are learning, and conditioning means you have learned. You have learned. According to Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, for one to be able to execute this, he proposed some shadows or processes that we could use to reinforce his theory or to educate people using his theory. And these shadows of reinforcement are to be explained by you and I. The first one is extinction hypothesis, which states that a conditioned response that has been denied the opportunity to be reinforced will eventually fade out. So when someone or you try to establish a behavior from a child and he has picked up the behavior, and before the establishment of the behavior, you were given something as a motivation. If you withdraw the motivation, eventually the learner will also reduce the way and manner he or she responds to you. For example, you have a kitten or a cat at home. You have named this cat Kojo, Ama, Mensa, maybe, or any name that you can think about. And anytime you call Kojo Ama, you start out with sound. This sound was something that cats naturally knew. The moment you do, any cat around will look around to see where that is coming from. So it is natural to them. But now you want to change that with a name. Let's give Kojo. So you do Kojo, Kojo continuously. And when they get to you, you try to cuddle them. When I say cuddle, you use your hand to refresh their back. And you could see when you start doing that, they'll be trying to lift their backbone as if they are responding to you. It's a kind of sweetness or pleasure they exert when you do that. So if you continue to do that for a longer time, now you withdraw the and go with only Kojo. The moment you mention Kojo, the cat will draw nearer to you or get close to you, then you cuddle the cat again. The cat has learned that. So if you continue to do this for a longer time and you do Kojo, the cat comes. You refuse to cuddle or try to manipulate the back of the cat so that you also feel any pleasure. Give it 1 week. You call Kojo, the cat will open the eyes looking at you without moving towards you again. Because what the cat needed, you have not done it and they don't like it. So it means whatever that gave them the pleasure is being withdrawn. And when it is withdrawn, they also not act the way you want them to act, which will go against the learning material or the learning task that you have engaged in. So extinction has taken place. The second, what do you call it, principle that governs classical conditioning is the spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery. When we say spontaneous recovery, it says that anything that the learner has learned and has forgotten, it doesn't mean it has totally disappeared. As time goes on, the individual organism will be able to recollect that no, something I learned which used to give me some pleasure can let me respond to it again. So the cat that I've used, If the cat has refused to respond to you when you call Kojo because you don't motivate it again, the cat will be looking at you, but you just give a break for 1 week and then call again Kojo. You see that the cat will remember that, no, this name Kojo used to give some pleasure to me, so let me rush and see. Maybe today that thing will occur. When the cat goes after recollecting, that is spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery. The third one is generalization. It is when the organism learns something and try to apply the same behavior to other similar things that are within the same environment. So let's say we use Pavlov bell. You have taught the cat with the word Kojo, Kojo, or Pavlov used the bell, and now a sound of a car, honk, pam, 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 we let the dog equally respond again, thinking is the same bell that Pavlov used. And now Amo and Kojo. You could see the ending is Amo, Kojo. Look at the sound. The car will respond to Amo because they sound similar. That's generalization. For example, you take your kid to hospital, he or she was injected by a nurse who wears white. The kid comes home and saw someone working with the home economist, also wearing white coat. The moment the kid saw the man, mommy, see the nurse who injected me. The child is doing generalization. The child is doing generalization. And again, you have taught your child four-legged animals at home. And the four-legged animal you used was a goat. The child went out there and saw a horse. Because a horse equally has four legs, the child called it, daddy, come and see a goat. The child has done generalization. You took your ward to the hospital. A medical doctor wearing beard injected the child. The child has never seen a goat with a beard. He went out there and saw a goat with a beard. Daddy, come and see the doctor. Because the child has seen a goat wearing the same beard like the medical doctor. It means the child has generalized the behavior of himself or herself because the thing that gave pain to him or she is similar to the goat because they are sharing a beard. So note it. We have stimulus discrimination, which means that as time goes on, when a learner learns something and go by that thing and other similar ones, that learner will eventually learn to know that no, sounds may look similar, but they might not be the exact one that allow them to respond in a particular way. So they can differentiate between the real name of the cat and the other names that look alike and respond to the real ones, not the unreal ones. So that's the discrimination in the classical conditioning. And then using the discrimination, if your child is able to differentiate a nurse and then the home economist, although they all wear white coat, but the child was able to say, no, the nurse was having a particular cap that had a green in it. So they can differentiate the wearings or the clothes of a nurse from that of a home economist. So as they can differentiate the beard of a goat and a beard of a human doctor. That's discrimination. The other one that follows, the principle that follows classical conditioning is higher order chaining. With higher order chaining, it says that we can add different stimuli continuously for them to evoke or to elicit a response from the organism. So let's say Pavlov, in this experiment, he added something, a torchlight. He flashed the torchlight, rang the bell, and presented the food. So the dog has to respond to the torchlight, respond to the bell, eventually respond to what? The food, and then give the response. So let's say, for instance, this is practice using the athletics. When they want to run, they say, on your marks, they position themselves in a particular way. Get set, they position themselves in a certain way. Then a whistle can pray, then they start running. So high order chaining, we add different stimuli together, more than one, so that a particular response will be exhibited by the organism. And using the discrimination, when you use traffic lights, we are able to identify red, go, green. I want to use that because I'm likely to use it as an example or as a question in one of your quizzes. A traffic light can be used. For example, we all know that when it is red, you stop. When it is amber or yellow, we prepare to go. When it is green, we move. So once you are able to discriminate among these three different colors and what it tells us, It is classical conditioning discrimination in nature. So we are able to differentiate different colors and what they mean to us, and not merely responding to any color just because we are exposed to them. Note it very well. After learning this theory, what do we think the theory can add to our profession as teachers? So here are they. We know in our various schools we use bells to signal things that are happening. Change of lessons, break time, break over, full time, and the rest. Our ability to use these things is based on classical conditioning proposed by Ivan Petrovich Pavlov. So the bells that we use in school to signal students for a particular function or situation is based on classical conditioning. Two, parents use it as basis. They are able to know when their kids have poo-pooed or wee-wee because they have timed the kids. It's classical conditioning. You human beings as students, before you came, you were sleeping in your king size beds, others in a single bed, others no bed but hard ground. But now, and you were sleeping up to some time, but now you go by a particular time, let's say Mondays and Thursday for lecture. Exactly 6 o'clock, you have to be in the lecture theater before the lecturer comes in, else you'll be sacked. So your ability to accustom yourself to a particular time and go by that particular time in order not to attract anything, you are affected by Ivan Petrovich Pavlov theory of classical conditioning. We go by alarms. We have used alarm to condition ourselves. Now we don't use the alarm again. But when it is 3 a.m. at dawn, we wake up to pray. Why are we using that? Or why are we doing that? Because we have learned to go by the time, and in the absence of the time, we act on that. That is classical conditioning playing in your life. And again, in the classroom situation or school situation, classical conditioning is applied on teachers. A teacher who canes a lot, student will see you like the one who canes, even if you don't carry a cane along with you. The moment they see you, they know you are the one who canes and they run away. They have conditioned your behavior with caning, and that is classical conditioning. Let us be mindful of that. So a teacher who canes a lot, don't be surprised when the learners see you coming to school, they'll be running away. They are conditioned to your caning behavior. So don't carry cane along. And when you are having a new student and you introduce the new student with something that is harsh, the moment he see you coming, he knows that is what you come with. So let us know the way and manner we behave so that we may not allow learners to condition themselves to some behaviors that we think we can even control in order to improve upon their learning as learners. And again, a teacher can equally use his behavior to cause fear in the learner, which is bad. So don't allow yourself to be used in such a way that it will go against the learner. These theories are very technical. They are very technical. I wouldn't want to dump all on you at once. I'll go according to their individuality and how short they are. Looking at classical conditioning and the introduction, I think it's okay for this evening. So I want you to take your time, watch the YouTube video, jot down your points. When we meet face to face, if you have any question, you bring it forth, I'll answer it for you. These questions, these theories are very critical, very important to every learner, including you and I. So take them serious. Take your time, listen to the audio, read your text. I've given the material already also. If I've not done that, I will supply you with it. But the textbooks that you bought, use them wisely, align with the information I'm presenting so that you appreciate all that we have on the table for you when it comes to theories of learning. Wherever you are going, these theories will follow you. Don't leave them behind. On this note, I end the class and enjoy your evening. Thank you.